The night I first tried crack cocaine is one I'll never forget, for reasons I can't quite explain. I wasn't prepared, or maybe I was. In a way, it's hard to say now. I never meant to make a trip report. I didn't have the intention of sharing any of this. But after seeing the staggering emptiness of what's out there on Arrowhead for crack, I figured I'd do it anyway. Maybe this will make sense later. I'm not sure. I knew I wasn't a good person. I didn't need anyone to tell me that. It was there, in the back of my mind, every time I did something like this. Something reckless, impulsive, without any consideration for the consequences. I didn't feel it though. I didn't care. Not in the moment. The first time I held that little pile of white powder in my hands, I felt the same weird thrill you get when you crossed a line you never thought you'd cross. It wasn't just the cocaine I was dealing with. It was something else too. Something darker. Something that had been growing inside me for a long time. And now it was too late to back out. I had to. Cook it up. Myself, you see. Cocaine HCl. Not even a gram of it, but enough. I knew how to do it, sort of. The first attempt was a mess. But what else is new? This was all on instinct, no plans. I wasn't prepared for this either. I was cracked. The equipment was rudimentary. I used a spoon, a glass of water, some aluminum foil. No fancy tools for me. I wasn't even sure how much of the HCl I was working with. Half a gram? Maybe. I eyeballed it, as you do. I dumped half of it on the spoon, mixed it with just a little baking soda, the kind you could get at any grocery store. It wasn't much, just a few pinches. Maybe I should have been more careful. But hell, this wasn't my first rodeo. I'd been down roads before, just never one like this. This one felt like it was going to tear me apart before I even started. I added water to the mix, just enough to cover it. The sound of it was disgusting, like spit, like something you shouldn't hear. I stared at it for a while, unsure, but there was something about it that pulled me in. Something about the way it started to bubble when I held the spoon over the candle, the way it turned into this sickly yellow blob. I didn't know when to stop, so I just let it keep going, watched it shrink, wondered how much of me was shrinking with it. I should have thought about what I was doing. I should have wondered if this was really worth it, but I didn't. I never do. That's the thing about me. I act without thinking, without considering how deep I'm digging, and maybe that's why I kept going. I was too far in already. No turning back. It cooled off eventually, hardening into something that didn't resemble anything I'd ever seen before. I scraped it off, and it almost looked like DMT crystals, beautiful, sharp, and wrong all at once. I knew the moment I held it in my hand that I was already too far gone, but I didn't care. I felt an odd sense of accomplishment, too, like I had just unlocked a door to some place I wasn't supposed to be, but had no intention of leaving. Not now. I didn't have a pipe. Of course I didn't. I was always unprepared for things like this. So I did what I always do, found a way. A straw, a bit of aluminum foil. It was stupid, I knew it was, but what the hell? Nothing about this night was ever going to make sense. I heated the foil over a candle and tried to inhale. I ended up coughing my lungs out, tasting nothing but the worst thing I've ever tasted. It wasn't even close to what I thought it would be. The burn, the foul taste, the nausea creeping in. It made me want to quit right then and there, but I didn't. Not yet. Later, I tried something else. I put the crack on the foil, which I'd balanced over the mouthpiece of an upside-down cup. It wasn't pretty, but I managed to trap the smoke inside. I pierced a hole in the foil and inhaled. This time, the smoke filled my lungs in a way that made me forget everything else. For a moment, I thought I could handle this, that it might be okay, that I was just a guy having a night out. But it wasn't like that, was it? It never is. The high hit me quickly. It wasn't anything like what I'd imagined. First, a dizzying rush. Head spinning, heart racing, like standing up too fast, but 1,000 times worse. My digits were buzzing, a strange, warm feeling crawling up from my fingers to my wrists. My lips went numb. I could feel the heat of it spreading in waves, but somehow it was comforting, a little too comforting. I didn't want it to stop, and for a moment, I wondered why I hadn't tried this sooner. I was happy, smiling for no reason. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt that way. No, scratch that. I wasn't happy. I was content. There's a difference. I knew this feeling wouldn't last. I always know. It's the kind of knowledge that comes with doing this kind of thing. Using something to escape. You know it'll never be enough. The taste of the high was something that would fade, but the craving would stick around. It always does. My body wanted more. But it didn't matter. I didn't have it. I never prepared for the inevitable, never saved anything for later. I spent the next few hours chasing the high, my hands fumbling with the foil and the lighter, trying to make it work. I wasted most of the crack. The heat from the foil was inconsistent, and it burned the product more than it smoked it. I cursed under my breath, frustrated, but in a way, I didn't care. I didn't care because this wasn't about the high anymore. It was about the moment, the escape, the satisfaction of knowing that I was in control, even if just for a little while. I thought I had control, but I didn't. The high was nothing compared to what came after. The next morning was a cruel reminder of how little I had actually gained. I woke up with my head pounding and a dry mouth. The cracks in my throat from the burn hits made it feel like I had swallowed glass. My thoughts were scattered, foggy. I tried to shake it off, but the emptiness gnawed at me. The regret wasn't a loud thing. It didn't scream in my face, but it was there, like a quiet shadow that followed me around, mocking me. That's when I realized just how far I'd fallen. I searched for any leftover crack on the floor. The carpet was stained with the remnants of my attempts. My hands trembled as I picked at the fibers, desperately trying to find even a speck of something I could burn. I knew it was hopeless. It was all gone. I was already planning my next hit, my next escape. I could feel the craving bubbling up inside me, like it was rising from some deep pit I didn't even know existed. I found a few tiny bits of burn-up crack, so small they were practically worthless, but I smoked them anyway. What else was I going to do? It wasn't enough. It was never enough. I didn't stop there. I grabbed the foil and scraped at the last burnt remnants. I inhaled. I could taste the burnt plastic, the bitter residue, but I didn't care. It wasn't about taste. It was about the feeling, the buzz, but it didn't come. The numbness in my fingers, the tingling in my lips. That's all I got. It was like trying to catch smoke with my bare hands. I should have stopped. I should have thrown it all away, but I didn't. My throat burned, but I held in the hits longer, trying to convince myself that I was in control. The pain made it real, made it feel like something worth chasing, but it wasn't. It never was. And that's when she walked in, my mother. I don't know how long she had been standing there. I didn't hear her coming. Maybe I didn't want to. She saw it. She saw everything. The smell of burnt foil, the disarray of the room, the way I was hunched over the carpet, eyes wild, desperate. I didn't look up. I didn't want to. I knew what she was thinking. Even if she didn't say a word, she didn't say anything, not a damn thing. She just stood there, watching me like she was seeing a stranger. I could feel her eyes on me, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't face what I had become, what I had done. She left the room without a word, without a look, and I stayed there, alone, because that's all I ever was, really. Alone in this mess I created. Alone in this hole that was getting deeper with every decision I made. I wasn't a good person. I wasn't even close. But I didn't care. Not then. I didn't care about her disappointment, about the guilt that would settle in later. I didn't care that I was already planning the next time I get more. I didn't care about the mess I was making of my life. I was cracked, and cracks don't heal themselves. Peace. I'm gonna be honest with you. No one really explains what crack is like. They don't talk about it the way it is. Raw and ugly and real. I didn't really understand it either. Not at first. They say crack's a hell of a drug. But hell, that's the understatement of the year. When I first started, we were trying to cook it up, bake it, but none of us really knew what we were doing. Not until it was too late. We'd throw the soda and the Coke together, then add some water, and heat it up until it turned into this big, hard white chunk. It was messy, but I didn't care. I didn't think about what I was doing. It was all just a game to me back then. The way you're supposed to do it, the right way, is different. First, you add the Coke and water, heat it just a bit, then sprinkle in small amounts of baking soda, stirring it gently. Let it sit and bubble up. Then, little by little, it starts to chunk up into this white, filmy substance. You keep cooking it, slowly, until it turns back into a liquid with oil floating on top. Then you scoop up the oil with a piece of metal. It's all about control. But you don't really get that when you start. Not at first. You just go along with it. Hell, I wasn't even sure if what I was doing was right. But I kept going. Kept thinking it'd get better. It never does it? I still remember the first time I smoked it. I didn't have much. Just a little rock. But I didn't care. I was gonna get high. I was gonna feel something. I grabbed the pipe, filled it with ash. Not steel wool. Steel wool burns. Makes the whole thing taste like poison. Smell like garbage. Ash was easier, cleaner. I melted the rock slowly, tapping the flame to it just enough so it'd start to drip down into the ash. I'd learned that much, at least. I remember the hit, the first one. It hit me so hard I couldn't breathe. The ringing in my ears was deafening. It felt like everything around me vanished for a second, like I was floating in some kind of vacuum. And I felt happy, ridiculously happy. For a few seconds, nothing else mattered. The world was perfect, and I was perfect in it. It wasn't the euphoria you hear about in the stories, though. It wasn't this great, big, loud high. It was stillness. A quiet, numbing kind of happiness, like a moment of peace that slipped through my fingers. And then it was gone, just like that. The high fades fast. Seconds, really. A minute, maybe. But once it's gone, it leaves you with a hole. That hole's what keeps you coming back. The emptiness is what drives you. The come down is worse than anything you've felt before. But it's so easy to ignore it when you've got another hit to chase. You don't think about the consequences. You just think about the next hit. And that's the trap. It's all just one big trap. The thing is, it doesn't stop there. Not when you're in it. I remember how it felt the first time I tried to stay up. 3 days straight. No sleep. Just the rush, the burn, the craving, the need. The way everything feels like it's moving too fast, but also like you're stuck in some kind of loop. And then that craving hits. It's like an animal inside you, clawing at your insides, screaming for more. I'd sit there, staring at the pipe, at the lighter, knowing I didn't have enough for another hit, but too far gone to care. I'd count the seconds, calculate how much time I had left before I'd need to go out and get more. How much time before I could fix the hole that was inside me. That numbness in my chest, that gnawing feeling. It never ends. It's an endless cycle. It's a funny thing, though. You don't really realize how bad it's gotten until it's too late. I never stopped to think about it. Never stopped to ask myself how far I'd fallen. It wasn't about self-reflection, about who I'd become. It was about the next high. And the high was always out of reach. It didn't matter how much I smoked, how many hits I took. It was never enough. It's the same every time. The more I smoked, the more I needed. You'd think I would have stopped after the first few times, but no. That first hit changes you. It makes you forget all the things you've learned before. It makes you forget who you are. It pulls you into this dark place where nothing matters except that next moment of bliss. And that's where you lose yourself. I've seen it in other people too. They get that same look in their eyes. The one that tells you everything's gone. The desperation is obvious. I've been there. Hell, I still am sometimes. There's no getting around it. You tell yourself you're in control, that it's just a little more, just one more hit, but it's never just one. It's never enough. I didn't even have the decency to pretend I was okay. I didn't try to hide it. I didn't care enough to. My friends, they weren't friends. They were just people who used me. They didn't care about me. They didn't care about anything but their own fix. I'd buy the crack, and they'd hang around like vultures, waiting for their share. They'd pull their schemes, try to con me into giving up more, making me feel like they were looking out for me, but I knew better. I wasn't stupid, but I was too deep in to care. That's the thing. You don't realize how bad it's gotten until you look around and see how you're losing everything. You sell everything you have for another hit. You destroy everything you've ever worked for. You hurt the people who love you. You sell them out without thinking twice. And then you're alone. Alone with the crack. Alone with the craving. Alone with that numbness that you can't ever get rid of. It's worse than any loneliness you've ever felt. The first time my mom walked in on me, I didn't even notice. I was too busy trying to light the foil, trying to catch the last of the smoke, trying to feel that rush. She just stood there. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. I knew. I could feel the weight of her disappointment. The silence between us, thick and suffocating. She didn't leave. She just stayed there, staring at me. I think she was waiting for me to do something, waiting for me to snap out of it. But I didn't. I couldn't. It was too late for that. It was too late for anyone to help me. And I never stopped. Not until it was all gone. The crack didn't fix anything. It didn't make me feel better. It didn't make the emptiness go away. All it did was create more emptiness. All it did was make everything harder. But I kept chasing it. And I still do, every damn day. Every second of my life. I can't stop. I won't stop. Because I know that, no matter what, there's always that next hit. There's always that next moment of numbness. I can't tell you why I do it. I can't explain why I let it control me. All I know is that I do. And maybe that's the saddest thing of all.